Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for joining our monthly webinar. My name is Emma Conlin. I'm the marketing specialist here at Panos. And joining me today, we have Christy Raisin, who is our senior creative resource and production manager, along with Carolyn Pittman, who is one of our senior account executives. So today we'll be discussing all things eBlasts and ways in which to elevate your marketing efforts. So to start things off, could you talk a little bit about the fundamentals of eBlasts?
Yeah, so basically an eBlast is an email. It's sent out to a large group of customers or subscribers or a purchase list, and it's sent out all at once to promote something specific or provide an alert or an update. So it's different than a newsletter, since those usually contain many pieces of information, different updates, lots of content. eBlasts are really focused, and they have one call to action usually. Sometimes there's a couple of call to actions, but they're usually all related to that same product or service, really trying to drive engagement to that particular thing. And then, when you do these, you want to look at key metrics, things like open rate, how many people actually open the email when you send it, click-through rates, how many people click on a link within that email once they open it, and then conversion on the flip side. Once they've gotten to wherever you're taking them from that email, how many people are actually taking the action of opening an account or signing up for a service or coming to your event.
Kind of with that in mind, perhaps one of the most crucial pieces of an eBlast process is who you would be sending the message to. Christy and Carolyn, when it comes to your audience, could you speak to that piece of the puzzle? Audience segmentation, paid versus existing customer lists. If you could maybe speak to that.
Yeah, I can kick off this question here, Carolyn. So yeah, when you get started on an eBlast, one of the main things you want to think about is, what do you want to promote and who your audience is going to be. So that's part of the initial segmenting part. So do you want to promote, a checking account? Do you want to promote a specific mortgage or an event that you have going on? There's a lot of different topics that you could focus on for your eBlast itself. And is this a message that you want to send to your existing customers? Do you want to send it to some prospect customers or both? Sometimes, you want to send the same message, but you will want to send it two different ways depending on, who's going to be receiving that message. So there's just a lot of layers to think about. So initially that, your audience, and then breaking that down a little bit more, and looking into getting a purchase list, right? A paid list. So that's kind of a whole separate thing. With your customers, they already know you. They may have some products with you. Maybe you want to do some cross promotions for things. So it's a little bit different way that you're going to message to your customers than it would be to a whole new audience. So we can dive into that a little bit more because I know there's a lot of intricacies with each way that you go. That's just kind of the initial overview of the difference. Is there anything that you want to add to that, Carolyn?
Yeah, I think, when you're looking at your existing customers, it's important to segment it as well. If you have multiple promotions going on, some promotions will be applicable to some of your customers and not others. You don't want to be selling mortgages to people who already have one, probably. Same with checking. You don't want to send them, get $100 if you open a new checking account, if they already have a checking account and didn't get $100 when they opened it. Just sort of keeping the messaging out there to those who it makes sense to go to. But then same token, if you have a promotion and you're really trying to get in younger customers, it should go to younger customers. Don't target your whole email list. A, you're going to be sending people information they don't want, and then when you have information they do want, they're not going to open it. But B, you're going to have your ratios are going to be better because you're going to the right audience, and so overall your work is going to be better received.
Yeah. And that ties in really well with a paid audience. So like Carolyn was saying, when you're really diving into the specifics, right? What their interests are, or, the specific product and the type of people that you want to target, a paid list might be the way that you want to go. You want to kind of reach out to more people beyond your customers. Maybe you want to get some new accounts or get more awareness out there. Ways that we do that, we actually work with a couple different vendors. We've had relationships for a long time. So, we have familiarity with purchase lists as well. And when you do that kind of campaign, there's different things to think about as far as, your parameters and what you want to target. So, let's say you have a specific product in mind, in a specific area, right? So you can actually really target your specific area. You can reach out a little bit further. Maybe you want to extend it like a couple miles outside of, that town or towns. You can look at, their interests and their behavior. What are they searching for? Are they interested in, mortgages or maybe like a savings account? You can actually target those types of interests. You can target age. If you have a product that's, relatable to an age, maybe like a first time mortgage or anything, that might fit that product. Initially too, you could also look at income. I mean, again, you don't have to do all these different things. Just initially you want to look at your area and maybe have an idea of what the interests are and kind of start there. I mean, that's usually where we start, and then branch out a little bit more if, if there's anything more specific you want to look for. And the really nice thing about doing a purchase email list is that information is pretty available. It's easier to target those kinds of potential customers in that way. And then also, as Carolyn mentioned earlier about like metrics and stuff, you can really kind of look at your messaging and how that is being received. Are you getting good results from that? Is that working? And you can actually get those results really quickly too, which is really helpful.
And we actually have a question here from David Freeman that is actually a really great segue into our next question. He says, I've been doing some testing for the past few months, but in your experience, do you find better days of the week and times of day bring on better open rates?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So yes, we have some suggested days of the week and times that we've seen over time really work well, and we've seen good response rates. So typically we have seen, middle of the week and like afternoon being good times. And that's because, weekends tend to be busy, Mondays and Fridays tend to be busy. So, if you're going to reach out, you kind of want to hit that window where people aren't being inundated or they're not really looking at their emails and emails are getting buried. Afternoon is a good time because, when it gets sent out, then people may look at it in the evening. They may look at it in the afternoon. So we typically see those as being better times. You can always test it out. You could always try like a Monday afternoon or Friday afternoon, but also keep in mind too the time of year. So like with the holiday coming up, those are busy times too. So that might not be your ideal time to send things out. Yeah, just keep an eye out for that. Like seasonal, is your product that you're marketing, something that will fit that's kind of trending that time of year. And also just, be careful of holidays and things like that where people are busy and not really paying attention to their emails. If it's a client communication that's important, like you got an upgrade coming up or something like that, or an event, I would say, send when that's best for you. That could be a Monday morning or that could be relevant for that content.
Yeah, and when it's promotional, there's always the option to sort of test, send out 2 batches, you divide your list in half and sort of look at, what seems to get the better response.
Yeah, exactly too. And like Carolyn's saying, you don't have to send it at the exact time, right? Like Tuesday at 4:00, you can vary it up. Maybe send the next message a different day, maybe send it on a Thursday at a different, time. So you don't have to be locked into like a certain specific time slot. So just kind of test it out and, see what works best.
And it's nice too to sort of layer it. I never recommend one deployment, just because you're likely to, even if you're not testing and trying 2 different groups, you're likely to have people who open at different times, or they'll see it and they'll kind of pass it, and then it goes so far down their their list of inbox items, that popping it up on a different day, they may have time to open it that day. So I think frequency, I would always recommend doing more than one hit, but timing, there's no specific science. There's no golden, beautiful time that just comes shining out of the ether. But yeah, those midweek afternoon, sometimes if you do like a late morning, like 11 o'clock, people tend to check emails on their phones at lunch. But yeah, unfortunately, there's no silver bullet for timing.
Yeah. And also too, you brought up a good point, Carolyn, too, about, frequency and how often and sending multiple messages. So yeah, if there is a message that you really want to get out there, specifically, I'm thinking about like if you were to do a purchase list and you're going to try to hit like potential new customers, definitely we recommend doing multiple deployments. And that's because, the first time it will go out there, you may get some results back. We typically tend to see better open rates and better click-throughs and results through second and third deployments. And you want to make sure you're not going too far, you're not waiting like months to send out, the following message. So typically every 2 weeks is on average is good. That way you're not inundating your customers or non-customers, and they're also not forgetting about you at the same time. It's a good reminder to bring that message back around. And typically we see people might think about things too. So they might, get the message the first time, see this great offer, and think about it. And then when, you send out the second deployment, it's like, oh yeah, I definitely want to look at that again.
Definitely. All really, really important stuff to consider. And that kind of leads us to my next question. When it comes to the eBlast itself, content is key. Chrissy, could you delve into the importance of things like subject lines, copy, CTAs, and how these elements might urge the reader to take action?
Yeah, I think this is a great question because there really is a lot to think about when it comes to the content, right? And probably one of the most important things you want to think about and nail is the subject line, because it's one of the first things that someone's going to see. And you just want to make sure that that wording and content is really enticing so that it encourages people to open up the email. So that's super important. Subject lines, you want to just be really clear as to what's inside. You get like a quick little hit, right? To just kind of say what it is. Like, do you have a special offer? I would put that right there, be, really clear about, what they're going to find in there. You can always ask a question. A question is a good way to do a subject line because it's something that's personal and it kind of really connects with that audience. So yeah, I would definitely say something really attention grabbing and really clear to start it off. So then once you have people interested and they open up the email, then you want to just hit them really quick with what you have to offer. So with eBlast, it's kind of like digital, right? So you want to have it be really clear with your message, thinking about it that way, and just making sure that you're sending people on the path that you want them to go to. So let's say, for example, you want to promote a mortgage. So where do we want people to go from the eBlast? So if we're taking them to a mortgage application page with a really great rate, so make sure that messaging and content in the eBlast says the rate, the great rate, right? To entice them to click through. Maybe say some benefits about it, what sets it apart from, your competitors, but just making sure you're not, filling up the eBlast with too much, and just making sure you're getting all the right highlights and key points in there, and then encouraging people to click through to the next phase, right? And getting them to actually take that step into the next application or landing page or where you want to send them to. So yeah, the call to actions themselves, you want to be really clear. If it's an apply now or apply online or learn more, just be really clear with that.
And the other thing I would note is just really be sure you're speaking to your audience. Use the language that will appeal to them. Use imagery that sort of matches the tone of what you're saying and audience you're speaking to, sort of making it personal and engaging to the people that you want to interact is really important as well.
kind of with everything that we've spoken about today in mind, could you both speak to some of the things that need to be considered when working on an eBlast campaign from a compliance and design perspective? So maybe things like can spam, readability, and accessibility, and a few other of those features.
Yes. So with emails, especially purchased emails, you want to make sure that you're following all can spam requirements. So any email in general should follow can spam, whether it's customers or purchase lists, but especially purchase lists because you're hitting non-customers. So can spam, what do we mean by that? If you haven't heard of can spam, it's a set of laws and criteria that was put out by the Federal Trade Commission. It's been around for, I want to say like 20 years or so. It's been around for a while. And it's just a list of criteria just to make sure you're hitting all these key points so that your email is not flagged as spam or blacklisted, or you get your domain blacklisted, because we don't want that and you don't want that. So the list of rules isn't, anything too lengthy. It's stuff that's pretty standard that we usually include and make sure that we include. So number one thing, make sure you identify yourself. We're always going to make sure you have your bank or credit union name on there. List your location. So usually maybe your main branch address location that can just be listed at the bottom. And that just identifies that you're a real, entity. And then another requirement, if this is for a purchase list, you want to make sure that you put a line in there that this is an advertisement. It can say, this is an advertisement on behalf of, blank, your financial institution, or it's a special offer. So that has to be in there. It can be small text in the top or the bottom. That's not necessarily something you have to put on your customer list, but you may do that if it's a special offer. You may, want to add that somewhere on a customer list, email that you're sending out. Just make sure your content is relevant, your subject lines are relevant, that it all, ties together. Just make sure that also another big thing is that you have an unsubscribe or opt-out link. I know we actually didn't mention this earlier with purchase lists, but another thing that just popped in my head was with purchase lists, the lists that we use have all users that have opted in. So that's a huge thing. And that's part of the can spam, is that when you do send messages to a purchase list, that you want to make sure that these customers or potential customers have opted in. And that can be done in a multiple different ways. So either they purchased something and they checked off that they, are okay with receiving special offers, or they did a survey and, checked something off. So all these people that we're targeting have opted in. So these emails that we send out at the bottom will have an opt-out option as well. Did I miss anything, Carolyn?
I don't think so. I mean, it sort of leads right into GDPR and, all the states that are putting out or have put out their own privacy regulations. GDPR was obviously in Europe and sort of the first big one to come out. But once again, it sort of requires people to opt in. So basically, usually this can happen at the time of a first account opening. You'll ask, are you willing to receive marketing emails? And then that goes into the core, flagging your customer as, yes, this person will receive marketing emails. And you may want to break it into different categories, because sometimes they're informational, sometimes there are updates like, hey, a branch is closed. So having different categories of emails your customers are willing to receive is also a good practice in terms of making sure that you're not hitting people with emails that they're going to opt out of all of, because if they opt out of marketing emails and then aren't getting information that the branch is closed, they're not going to care that they opted out of marketing emails. They're going to be angry that they didn't get the update. So, but yeah, having that sort of opt-in, opt-out ability is important on the customer side as well as the purchase side. So good to have on all sides. And it's nice, there are other ways to sort of get that opt-in. There can be places on the website where people can say, hey, I want to receive these kinds of emails. You can get people to sign up for things, as you have promotions out there. But easiest way is right when they open their very first account.
And part of your question too, Emma, about content, right? So yeah, making sure that you're following all the can spam too is important. And then we did talk a little bit about content before and messaging, but for design and bringing that content to life, part of it too is legibility, right? So you want to make sure that you're setting this up, keeping the responsiveness in mind. Most people are viewing these on their phone, but some people can be viewing them on their desktop as well. So making sure that the layout is responsive and that it's all text so that it doesn't shrink down in an image and it's too small. So just keeping that in mind too. That's part of can spam. You don't want to go too small with the size of the content, and just making sure all the content is broken out in a very good way, and that it's not all running together, right? And separating it and putting CTAs in place that makes sense. You could put the CTA higher in the layout if you wanted to, but we found with emails that people will typically scroll, so you could put a button a little bit lower on an eBlast, than you would typically on a landing page or a website page. And like Carolyn said earlier, one main CTA is good. You could do a couple if you wanted to, but with eBlast, it's typically like a one hit, kind of like a digital ad in a way. It's like that next step that, we want to bring you somewhere else, and you don't want to confuse people and, have them not know where to go. So we want to help direct them to where we want them to go.
It looks like we do have one more question here. The question we have is, what is the rule for unsubscribe as far as how long do you have to opt them out? Especially if you have a series of emails going out over a handful of days.
Yes, that's a really great question. I want to say it's 30 days. We can definitely double check that, but I believe you have to comply within 30 days from that opt-out. I can actually try to look real quick too, because I don't want to give the wrong answer as well. There is a handy website too. If you go to the Federal Trade Commission, there's a Can Spam Act guideline in there. It's listed a lot of stuff that we've talked about too, but there might be some other things as well. Yes. Okay. Yep. It is 30 days. So just confirm that. So you have 30 days to comply with the opt-outs. Does that help answer the question? Oops.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, I think Carolyn might be having some battery issues, but so I guess to kind of round things out, Christy, could you maybe share some of your final thoughts, maybe some key takeaways that FI should consider when it comes to eBlast?
Yeah, so just some final thoughts on eBlast. So in general, they're really quick and easy to get your message out there. I would say quicker than if you were to consider direct mail, setting it up and, reaching a specific audience too. So the criteria is a little bit different when you're targeting a purchased email list versus like a purchased direct mail list. You may not get exactly the same match of people because the way that those lists are sourced are done differently. So you could be a little bit more specific in targeting for email lists. And also, I know Carolyn would mention this too, because she talks about it a lot, is just hitting the message in different ways, so different applications. So if you have a promotion that you want to do, definitely pair an eBlast with, you could pair it with doing a direct mailer. You could pair it with doing a digital ad campaign. Try to get that message out there in different ways, because it's gonna widen that net, and you're gonna hit more potential customers that way. So yeah, I would say overall, eBlast, pretty quick way to market yourself, cheaper overall, budget-wise, than if you were to do direct mail. But if you do them together, right? If you had the budget and wanted to do multiple, avenues, yeah, I would say that would be the way to go to get your message out there.
Well, I think we covered a lot of really good information today. I want to thank both you and Carolyn for joining, and everybody else as well. If anybody has any additional questions, they'd like to continue the conversation, please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us. Our emails are the first letter of our first name, last name at canvasmarketing.com. So for myself, it would be ECONLAN at canvasmarketing.com. And again, thank you everybody. We certainly hope to see you next month.